Good morning, folks. I'm Dave Canterbury with Self-Reliance Outfitters in the Pathfinder School. And what we're going to do today is we're going to forge a frog gig. And I have two frog gigs here. One of them was forged by my buddy Atlee Miller at the gathering 2 years ago. One of them I forged yesterday. And both of these are socket type frog gigs that socket onto the front of a stick to be used for gigging frogs or fish. And you have to realize that there's a difference really between what you see made out of wood most of the time on the internet and what is actually a frog gig. A frog gig generally has very, very thin tines because you're trying to stick it through the animal and it's barbed on the back side so that the animal can't pull off. Most of what I see people use that they call a frog gig that's been made out of wood, in most cases, is nothing more than something that will pin them down until you can retrieve that animal, because you're not going to push it through the animal and pick the animal up on the other side. The tines and things are just too big, too beefy, and too bulky. They're just going to destroy any meat that you would hope to be saving by gigging that frog or fish. Now, a fish gig would be larger, and these would be more like a fish gig, unless you were talking about a very large bullfrog. And then, even then, these tines are fairly marginal. They're probably 1/8 of an inch or better in diameter, and that's about as big as you'd ever want to go for a large bullfrog. Anything the size of this or bigger would really be more considered a fish type gig. So what I'm going to try to do today is I'm going to try to make something that's got a little bit smaller tines, but I'm also going to change the way it attaches. And I'd like to be able to use it to be able to cook meat over the fire as well. So what I'm going to try to do is make the gig portion a bit smaller in tines. We're going to barb the tines like these are so that we'll hold the animal in place once we stick the animal. And then also, I'd like to be able to screw it onto a stick with a spiral pigtail on it so that I can hold meat over the fire as well as screw it to a stick to use for a gig. That's my plan. We'll find out how well that works out in just a minute. Stay with me. right, so I pretty much got what I wanted right there. I've got a gig that has very small tines on it, so it's actually a frog gig. And it also screws on to the end of a stick. Any green stick will work. This is the one I had that had a frog gig on it already. And I can also use this to cook meat over the fire. Now, I did not harden this piece. I know somebody's going to ask me that. I let this air cool and anneal. So if anything is going to bend, it's not going to snap. If I took this rebar and heated it up to yellow, orange hot and quenched it, it would be brittle. And I don't want it to be brittle. I'd rather it bend than break, because frogs and fish are not going to bend this. But a rock or a stump might, and I'd rather be able to straighten the thing out and resharpen it easy with a file or a carborundum stone than break it off and have to make another one. So this should serve the purpose of both a frog gig and a meat fork, and it's fairly small and fairly light for my kit. I'll lay it out here on the anvil and compare it to the other two, and you can see the difference in size and diameter of the tines as well. I appreciate your views. I appreciate your support. I thank you for everything you do for our school, for our family, and for our business, for all our sponsors, instructors, affiliates, and friends. I'll be back with another video as soon as I can. Thanks, guys.